somewhere deep in the quiet, humid jungles of a small island in the Pacific. Long after the world had celebrated the end of war, a man continued to wait. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and leaves, and the sound of insects hummed softly in the background. Time seemed to move differently here, slower, almost forgotten. This is the story of a soldier who never believed the war had ended. As you settle in, take a slow breath and imagine the distant sound of wind brushing against tall trees and a man, alone, standing watch. His name was Hiro Onoda. He was a young officer in the Japanese army during World War II. Like many soldiers of his time, he had been trained not only to fight, but to endure, to survive in the harshest conditions, to resist surrender at all costs. Before he was sent to the island of Labang in the Philippines, he was given a very specific set of orders. They were simple but absolute. He was told to disrupt enemy activity, to gather intelligence, and most importantly, he was told never to surrender. No matter what happened, no matter how long it took, no matter what he might hear, he was told the war would continue and that he must remain loyal until his superiors returned for him. And so, when he arrived on the island in 1944, he prepared himself for a long and difficult mission. At first, he was not alone. There were a few other soldiers with him. Together, they hid in the jungle, moving quietly, surviving on whatever they could find. They avoided detection, watching from the shadows, always alert. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And then, one day, something changed. The war ended, but no one told them. Leaflets began to fall from the sky, drifting slowly down through the trees. They carried messages, announcements that the war was over, instructions for soldiers to come out and surrender peacefully. But Onoda did not believe them. To him, this was just another trick by the enemy. Psychological warfare, a way to lure him out of hiding. He remembered his orders: never surrender. Never stop fighting. And so he stayed. Years began to pass. One by one, the other soldiers who had been with him either surrendered, were captured, or died. Each loss made the jungle feel quieter, more empty. Eventually, Onoda was alone. Completely alone. The world outside continued to change. Cities were rebuilt, families moved on, new generations were born, but deep within the jungle, time stood still. Onoda created a routine. Each day he would patrol the area, carefully observing his surroundings. He maintained his weapons, cleaned them, and made sure they were always ready. He found ways to survive. He ate coconuts, bananas, and whatever small animals he could catch. He collected rainwater. He repaired his clothes over and over again. At night, he would listen the distant sounds of the island, the wind, the occasional echo of human activity far away. But he never approached, he never revealed himself. Sometimes he would find newspapers or additional leaflets. They all said the same thing. The war was over. Japan had surrendered, but he could not accept it, because if it were true, then his entire mission would have been meaningless. And so he chose to believe what he had been told long ago, that the war was still ongoing, that he was still needed. Years turned into decades. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. The jungle became his entire world. His only companion was silence. And yet he remained disciplined, focused, loyal. Occasionally, he would encounter locals on the island. Farmers, villagers, people simply living their lives. To them, he was a ghost. Back in Japan, his story slowly became known. People heard rumors of a soldier who had never surrendered. Search parties were sent. Even recordings from his family were brought to the island, but nothing worked, because Onoda did not trust any of it. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. A young traveler named Norio Suzuki decided to go looking for him. Suzuki approached the situation differently. He did not come as a soldier or as an authority figure. He came simply as a curious human being. After searching through the dense jungle, he finally found him, a man who had been alone for nearly 30 years. Suzuki spoke to him gently. He explained that the war had ended long ago, that Japan was no longer fighting. But Onoda remained cautious. There was only one thing that could convince him. He said he would only surrender if he received direct orders from his commanding officer. And so something incredible happened. They found the officer, now an older man, living a completely different life, far removed from war. He travelled to the island, and there, standing face to face with the soldier he had once commanded, he gave a new order. He told him the war was over, that his mission had ended, that he could finally come home. For the first time in decades, Onoda lowered his weapon. The jungle, which had once been his battlefield, became quiet in a different way, not with tension, but with release. He stepped out of the shadows and into a world that had moved on without him. Imagine that moment. The feeling of time collapsing all at once. 30 years gone in an instant. When he returned to Japan, he was greeted with a mix of emotions. Some saw him as a symbol of loyalty. Others saw the tragedy of isolation. But beyond all of that, there was something deeply human about his story. A man who followed his orders. A man who believed in his duty. And a man who, for decades, lived in a world that no longer existed. As you listen to this story, let your mind slowly drift. Imagine the quiet jungle once more, the soft sound of leaves, the distant hum of insects, and a lone figure standing still in the darkness, holding onto a past that the rest of the world had already let go. Now gently let that image fade. Let the jungle disappear. Let the silence grow softer, and allow yourself to rest. The story is over, and it's finally time to sleep.